was lots of news yesterday surrounding the West Ham manager's job. Some of it good, some of it bad, some of it just really concerning, but almost all of it completely confusing. To almost update you on a daily basis makes a mockery of the whole situation. It really is, but I'm going to have to tell you anyway. As of yesterday, Paulo Fonseca was the favourite for the job. It looked like Lopetegui was going to AC Milan. And then it turns out that there was some form of uproar, petition. I don't know. There was certainly some disenchantment from the AC Milan fans who it seemed did not want Lopetegui. I don't know how much of this stuff is true. This is just what I've read on the situation. So it turns out that actually he didn't get the job and he's now back on for the West Ham job. He's now been reinstated as favourite for the West Ham job. It's understood that a decision will be made by West Ham in May before season ticket renewal. David Moyes could still keep his position. I think that's highly unlikely. My reading of the situation is he's gone. But nothing is beyond the realms of possibility at all, by the way. And now Fonseca... Yesterday I did a video saying I'm quite warm into Fonseca. It seems like Fonseca's now one of the favourites for the AC Milan job, and we might get Lopetegui. There's a source, not a source at the club, but a source with a spicy source with connections with the club, who's basically saying he thinks Lopetegui is the favourite for the West Ham job. Whew, okay. Now, I don't know how much of this we can take as gospel. Almost none of it. However, what we are seeing are the same names being regurgitated over and over. And I think if West Ham had a separate name, which wasn't one of the two or three that we're hearing, the two or three is Hansi Flick in the last 2 or 3 days, then West Ham are doing a very, very good job of keeping it quiet. Now, West Ham can keep things quiet. I just want to make this point right now. Up until Ruben Amorim was pictured getting on the plane, which was clearly leaked by somebody at their end, nobody knew. We were not hearing for 2 or 3 days afterwards, Ruben Amorim's coming over for talks. We just weren't. Nobody knew it. So we were able to keep that quiet. The only reason that got out into the public domain was because it was leaked from their end. So are we capable, West Ham, of keeping a rumour of a manager quiet? I think we are. However, reading between the lines, it does look like Lopetegui or Fonseca and possibly more Lopetegui. Now, this is not a universally popular appointment. And from what I can tell, it's because of, a number of things. Because of what happened at Wolves, because of his style of football, because he seems to have falling out with people, be it either the Wolves hierarchy. It's not just him. There's a number of people that have had problems there. So maybe the problem is with the board of directors at Wolverhampton Wanderers and not Lopetegui. So I think, that's fair to try and be as open-minded as you can when assessing this stuff. One of the other reasons that maybe it's suggested that he doesn't get on with everybody is it wasn't great at Real Madrid and he did have a falling out with his players and the Spanish FA. So I don't know. Read into that what you will. The style of football is believed to be a little bit negative. I think it's a little bit defensive. He keeps more possession than David Moyes, but actually he's probably better at defending than David Moyes. And there is then the suggestion that he doesn't necessarily promote youth players. I made the case yesterday, Fonseca and everything that he'd said about it was his job to promote youth, that he was singing the sort of lyrics that West Ham fans want to hear. So whilst Lopetegui's not quite a pantomime villain, it's not getting a great response when it's suggested that he might be the next West Ham manager. What interests me most about this, though, is the Tim Steidten situation. Because yesterday, the news story suggested that Steidten had been mandated with overhauling the West Ham squad and he was looking to bring in as many as 8 players. Great. Brilliant. Sounds like good news to me. You look at the squad, you look at the age of a lot of the players, you look at the contractual situation of so many of them, and you cannot look at the West Ham squad situation and think anything other than, whoa, there's a lot of work to be done there. So good. I'm glad that Tim Steidten is looking at this and bringing in 8 players. However, it would appear that one of the other factors with Lopetegui is he likes a control over transfers. Now, this is this is just not particularly good news for Steidten, because I do believe that Steidten's been biding his time with David Moyes. He was brought in, he was mandated as the director of football with being in charge of football recruitment. The idea, as I understand it, and please tell me if I'm wrong, but I think the premise of a director of football is to have an ethos and a philosophy at the club where you put a series of structures into place. And that is you help with any hiring of the manager, but moreover, you implement your philosophy at the club. So if the manager changes, everything else at the club doesn't change. So the recruitment and the style of players remain the same. The scouting remains the same. So you do basically what Brighton did, which was, if you lose Harry Potter, no problem, you get De Zerbi and you put him in there. You don't necessarily overhaul the whole infrastructure of the club. But to be able to do that, you have to allow the person that you've mandated with that task of overhauling the club and putting this structure in place, in this instance Tim Steidten, you have to allow him power. The January transfer window with Calvin Phillips coming in demonstrated that he really had no power. Not just that, he also highlighted Ibrahim Osman, and as we understand it, that David Sullivan pulled the rug from underneath him on that. So that would demonstrate he had, particularly in January, no power. I think you could say that he certainly had some in the summer that preceded it when we brought in Mohamed Kudus, Edson Alvarez, Mavropanos would indicate that he certainly wielded some power then. But I think he's been patient, and he's probably thought in January, do you know what? Moyes' contract's out of, it's going. He's not getting a new contract. He'll be going. If I'll be patient, I can see him off, basically. And then he's probably thinking, if I see him off, then what happens is I get ultimate power. I can do my job once Moyes leaves. The last thing I think Steidten wants to see is another manager coming in who is having not a say. I'm not talking about a say on transfers. I think a say is very, very different. I think every manager should have a say. I do believe that any manager coming in should be saying to Steidten, as much as Steidten's going to be overhauling the squad, he should be saying, actually, I'm probably going to play this style this season. So when you're looking at fullbacks, can you make them more wing-backs than fullbacks? Stuff like that, I think, is important for a manager or a head coach to be able to say to the director of football. The director of football says, okay, gotcha. Right, okay, so what we're looking for? So, okay, so you want them to be, better at crossing? Do you like them cutting in? What sort of aspects do you like in these players? But ultimately, it's going to be the director of football that goes out and he basically buys the players and he gives the manager or the head coach what he's asked for in terms of style of play. That's pretty much how it works everywhere, almost everywhere. There aren't too many clubs where that's not the infrastructure, basically. And I'm worried because I think it's important that West Ham do this. There's a reason that everybody's doing that, and that's because it works. And I think it's important. I'm not spending much time, as hopefully you've noticed, sort of having a go or digging David Moyes out at the moment. I think he's gone. I really do. So there's no point in kicking him on the way out. Well, what's the point in that? He's done some good things at West Ham over the years. He really has. But one of the things he's not done, I don't feel he's nourished the squad. I don't feel he's cared for it. It feels like a rusty old car's been left in the garage for too long. It hasn't been washed. It hasn't been maintained. The mechanics have not been done. And for that reason, I do not believe that style of management, where the manager decides everything, is the way to go forwards. I think you need somebody that's going to identify when players are running out of their contracts, when players are getting too old. It's not just about buying players, it's about moving them on at the right time. And I think if I was to choose a word, I think there's been negligence under David Moyes for that. And for that reason, I want to switch to the new system. I really, really do. And if we're going to do that, and if we concede that that's a good thing to do, then you have to say that Tim Steidten, even if you don't like Tim Steidten, a director of football is a hugely important role at any club, and particularly at West Ham. And I do worry that the guy we got in place at the moment, who we hope is going to be good, we don't have a lot of evidence with Tim Steidten, but we've got a transfer window, and we hope that he can replicate what we've seen by Leverkusen. That's the model, isn't it? That's what we should all be aspiring to do. That's what we should all be aspiring to be. What's happening at Bayer Leverkusen? Well, we hired someone from that club. Well, I think we've done the brave bit. I think we made the big jump. I think at that point you let him run with it. You got to. It's sort of like that handing something over. No, and you don't quite want to hand over the reins, and I think we've got to do that. My concern is with this Lopetegui thing. Maybe that pisses him off. I could be wrong on all of this stuff. We could all be so wrong on this, and that's why I'm not nailing my colours to the mast by saying Lopetegui is going to be a disaster. Maybe, just maybe, we know he's presented, and I'm talking about Lopetegui here, we know he's presented his vision for West Ham and how he would like to do the job. Maybe, just maybe, Lopetegui has said, I am going to try and bring youth players through. I will take the recommendations of the director of football. If he said that, everything else sort of melts away apart from the style of football. But as I maintain to you, I'm not overly concerned with style of football. What irritates me is when it doesn't work. What irritates me is when we sit back and we defend all the time and goals keep flying in. At that point, I think, well, hold on, mate, it ain't working. Actually, I would make the case that David Moyes is probably better at attacking than he is at defending. So when he said, I'm an attacking coach, I think he was sort of half right. We're better at scoring goals. We're not too bad at scoring goals. We're better at scoring goals than we are at keeping them out. I think with that in mind, just go for it, mate. Just go for it. We're conceding 2, 3s, 4s and 5s in almost every game. It's happening anyway. You might as well keep the ball down the other end of the pitch. So I'm willing to be have my mind changed. I'm willing to be corrected on the whole Lopetegui thing. I really am. No problem. No problem with changing my mind, no problem being wrong at all. And I've got to say, I'm not firmly in the belief. I've got quite firm beliefs with David Moyes. I don't really have any with Lopetegui. I'm relying on second-hand information from other people. So a little bit of Wolves, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend I watched every Wolves game once he took over. Of course I bloody didn't. There's better things to do with your weekend, isn't there, quite frankly? So I don't know. I do suspect and I do worry about Tim Steidten, though, and I do worry about the competency of the running of the club. I'm happy to be corrected. But I do sometimes look at West Ham and look at the way it's run, and sometimes I think the left hand don't know what the right hand's doing. Sometimes I think it's complete and utter incompetence. I'd like to be corrected on that, by the way, more than anything. But there you go. The news will probably change once again tomorrow, and it will probably change. There'll be a massive swing again. At this point, I still prefer Fonseca, but it's looking more likely. The bookies odds probably change from day to day. It's looking more likely like it's. I might be saying his name wrong. It might not be Lopetegui. It might be Lopetegui. Lopetegui. Who cares? Hopefully, I don't have to correct myself because we don't want another Paqueta situation rearing its ugly head.